morning. Join us in our welcoming song. You are welcome here, wherever you're going to, wherever you're coming from. You are welcome here. You are welcome here, wherever you're going to, wherever you're coming from. You are welcome here, 'cause it's a house of love, a house of hope and dreams. It's a house of love, and you are welcome here. Yes, it's a house of love, a house of hope and dreams. It's a house of love, and you are welcome here. Bienvenido aquí. Quiere que vayas tú, quiere que vengas hoy. Bienvenido aquí. Bienvenido aquí. Quiere que vayas tú, quiere que vengas hoy. Bienvenido aquí. A este lugar de amor, sueños de ilusión. A este lugar de amor. Bienvenido aquí. Si es un lugar de amor, de sueños de ilusión. Es un lugar de amor. Bienvenido aquí.
Good morning. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you are here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our tech team is Tom Carlstrom and Dean Gadet. Julia Fogel will be helping me with the worship this morning. I have passed a rapid test this morning, so you will see me leading worship without my mask on. Justin Gray is our worship musician this morning. He is offering several music pieces this morning by composers from countries that are providing significant support to Ukraine, and you'll see those countries indicated in the music information on the screen. Welcome to this Sunday worship service. Welcome to those of you here in the chapel, and welcome to those of you watching live using Zoom. For those of us here in the chapel, you will notice that we have the back door open. This is to ensure good air circulation in the room. So I know it's a little chilly this morning, so hang in there and congratulate yourselves on making it to church this morning when you could have been warm and comfortable at home. In-person church is for the hardy. For those of you using Zoom, please notice on your Zoom menu, you have a chat button. You're welcome to use the chat during the service. Just be sure that when you post that you open that little blue menu there to select everyone. We like to use chat for everyone to see what's being shared, and our tech deck can't necessarily keep an eye on private messages just to them. So I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers at Chalice this morning. Towards the end of the service on Zoom, there will be a link in the chat box for adding your name to our email list. Here in person, just get with me after the service and I can collect that information. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about our groups and activities, many of which still use Zoom, but many of which are starting to happen in person as well. So now, let's take a breath together.
We acknowledge that our service is taking place on the stolen territory of the Kumeyaay, meaning humans or people, and the Payamkawishim, meaning Western people. A land acknowledgement works to undo the intentional erasure of Indigenous people and to support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown. We acknowledge the original inhabitants as a first and critical step toward learning and working with Indigenous communities to secure meaningful partnership and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and sacred homeland.
Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, recently reminded us that this symbol of our faith is a symbol of resistance to Nazism and a symbol of safe passage for refugees. Julia Fogel will light our chalice this morning. The holy month of Ramadan has begun for our Muslim friends, so Ramadan Mubarak to those of us who observe. Our call to worship. It is said that ministers are here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable. May our time together this morning be a comfort and a confrontation. May we here find peace in times of tumult. May we here invite tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in times of restlessness. May we here allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the time to consider what you've never considered. Let this be the time to imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being into the world. Let us worship together. You're invited to rise in body or spirit to join in singing.
Like
Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by sharing and honoring our joys and sorrows. Joys and sorrows will be collected here in the room, and those of you online, if you have a joy or sorrow to share, you can enter that into the chat box with your name. So these are spoken out loud in a few minutes, but these don't become part of the recording that we post, so don't worry about that part of your privacy. So we'll take a few minutes for music, for people to share, for us to distribute and collect candle cards here in the room. Also, if you would like to share with me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow, or to make a prayer request, I invite you to email me, and my email address will be on screen. All right. We will light a pillar candle this morning for all the joys and sorrows that go unshared and unspoken. These two are held in the love and support of our community. Our story is called Layla's Lunchbox, a Ramadan story, written by Reem Farouki and illustrated by Leah Lyon. This version of the story is abridged. "We won't be needing this for a while," said Layla's mother, hanging up Layla's lunchbox. "Imagine! I won't be eating lunch for a month," replied Layla with a twirl. "I won't have to pack a lunch for a month," said her mother with a bigger twirl. Last year, Layla had wanted to fast with her best friends, Hind and Ishrat, during Ramadan, but her mother had insisted she was too small. Layla stopped twirling. She missed her friends. Moving from one continent to another had been hard, all the way from the Middle East to North America. Now she lived in Peachtree City, but it didn't feel like home. Abu Dhabi still felt like her home. The next morning, before the sun rose, it was time for sehri. Sehri is a meal Muslims eat before sunrise during Ramadan. Layla and her family ate a huge meal. Then they prayed. Layla's mom gave her a note to give to her teacher. Layla read it on the school bus. It said, "This is Layla's first time fasting for the month of Ramadan, so it is an exciting time for us. Please excuse Layla from lunch for this special month. Thanks, Mrs. Malik." Layla was suddenly frightened. What if her teacher had never heard of Ramadan? That day, her teacher noticed Layla had not brought lunch. Layla had still not given Mrs. Penworth her note. Samantha offered to share her lunch, but Mrs. Penworth shook her head. Thank you, Samantha, but Layla, please get a sandwich from the cafeteria. Layla sat by her friend Anna, who was eating a cream roll. Cream rolls were her favorite. Do you want some? Asked Anna. Layla thought about telling Anna she was fasting, but she didn't think anyone at Sunnyvale Elementary School knew about Ramadan. No thanks, said Layla. Layla's stomach rumbled. Even Isaiah's bologna sandwich looked good, and Layla didn't even like bologna. Layla decided to sneak out of the cafeteria. Layla went to the library. Why, Layla, it's a pleasure to see you. But what brings you here at lunchtime? Asked Mrs. Carmen, the librarian. Layla felt safe among all the books. Words began to tumble out of her mouth. Layla told Mrs. Carmen that Mrs. Penworth and her classmates didn't know she was fasting. Layla told Mrs. Carmen all about Ramadan and why Muslims fasted. Mrs. Carmen understood. You must feel special to fast this Ramadan, said the librarian with a smile. I do, said Layla, but why is it so hard to explain? You know what I do when I can't get my thoughts out, or when I feel shy about talking? Asked Mrs. Carmen. I write my thoughts down. So Layla got to work. She wrote neatly, adding extra loops to her capital L. She worked so hard her cheeks turned pink. Dear Mrs. Penworth, I didn't forget my lunch today. It's Ramadan. My mom finally let me fast. This means I won't be eating lunch for a month. Sincerely, Layla. P.S. I'm Muslim. P.P.S. My mom wrote you a note too. Here it is. P.P.P.S. Here is a poem I wrote about Ramadan. Ramadan is a month Muslims celebrate, a time to count our blessings and appreciate. Muslims fast before sunrise to sunset. But wait, that's not all just yet. Ramadan is a time for lots of prayer. We help the poor people to show we care. So in the day, I won't be eating any food, but hopefully I will stay in a good mood. Layla hurried back to the cafeteria to join her class. Before school was out, she quietly dropped both notes onto Mrs. Penworth's desk. The next morning, Mrs. Penworth didn't say anything about the notes, so Layla wondered what had happened. At times like this, she wished her friends Hind and Ishrat were there with her. They would know what to say. At lunchtime, Mrs. Penworth patted Layla on the back and handed her a message. Mrs. Penworth had made the capital L in Layla's name extra loopy. The message said, Dear Layla, I enjoyed your lovely poem about Ramadan. I'm impressed you're fasting. What a special time for you. You and your family must be thrilled. Would you share your poem with the class today after lunch? You can go to the library instead of the cafeteria this month during lunch. Mrs. Carmen is excited to see you. Sincerely, Mrs. Penworth. P.S. Mrs. Carmen told me you missed your friends from your old school. I hope you keep making new friends with our class. Layla twirled all the way to the library. She couldn't wait to share her poem with her class. At sunset, she and her family would eat iftar, a meal that Muslims eat to open that day's fast. Today at iftar, she would celebrate this day. I just want to say a quick word about Ramadan. Having Muslim friends, Ramadan is a lunar holiday and so fully moves around the Gregorian calendar year. And I'm so aware of the difference between Ramadan and April, where there might be like 14 hours of sunlight compared to December when it might be more like 8 or 9. So just my heart will be with Muslim friends this month. So this year we are studying the proposed 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism. And several of my sermons are looking at phrases and ideas from the principle to help us better consider the depth and meaning of the wording. The principle commits us to working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. I preached about the phrase beloved community in January, and this morning I want to look more closely at the word multicultural. It's significant that the proposed eighth principle uses both of those words, diverse and multicultural. We're working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. So these two words are often used interchangeably, as if they mean the same thing. Using them both in our wording calls our attention. Yes, they mean something different. So what do they mean if they don't mean the same thing? And what does it mean to build multicultural community? So Chalice as an organization, as a community, has a culture, the behavior and norms that we expect and are accustomed to from one another. We could have a workshop about that and break into small groups for discussion and come up with the lists of characteristics that are the culture of this religious community. And then we could probably also do that for Unitarian Universalism, and we could look for overlap and ways that we're different. So one of our characteristics is that worship starts on time, most of the time. We have coffee and refreshments after worship, even online, right? We have called it online coffee hour these past 2 years, even though we can't offer coffee for online folks. It's the norm during our worship that someone up front does the speaking and the leading, and those of you attending do the quiet listening. Online worship has developed new norms. I mentioned at the beginning, using the chat, and we know what's typical to read there and what would be unusual and even unwelcome. So I don't have to say, don't try to sell us things in the chat, right? We know someone trying to sell something in the online chat would be a problem. It's not what we're used to. It would probably be brought to my attention quickly after the service. And as a community, you would probably expect someone, probably me, to address the person who had broken the unwritten rules of our community. Similarly, if someone stood up here in the middle of the service and started talking, if someone's phone rang and they started talking on it in here, these things aren't part of our culture here and would stand out as unusual and unwelcome. So becoming multicultural doesn't mean we set aside all of our norms, but it does invite us to first recognize that we have norms here and to start to do some work articulating them. That's its whole own project. We have written guidelines, our bylaws, our policies, verbiage on the church website, here in our newsletter, and we have unwritten rules of our community, don't we? Just like any community does, just like a family does, just as groups of friends do. There's the official way that decisions are made by me and the board of the trustees and our coordinating team. And then there's unofficial influence that people or groups of people have in a community like ours. So this feels a little taboo, saying out loud what isn't normally said out loud, but this is all how communities of people work, I'm sure you recognize. You will especially recognize this dynamic if you have ever been in a situation where you didn't know the unwritten rules. Visiting a friend's family, maybe visiting a partner's family for the first time, starting a new job, trying to join a new circle of friends, starting to attend a new church, religious community. The unwritten rules of culture aren't automatically harmful, but they can absolutely be one of the ways that people are made to feel unwelcome. So, for example, I'd say it's a norm that most things at Chalice start at the announced time. But that's not true all of the time. Many of our small groups and committees might choose to start a few minutes late when they know that someone else on the committee is on their way or expected soon. We just had a new member ceremony a week ago that was advertised to start at 3:15, but we probably actually started around 3:25. So we were calling people in from the courtyard and everything had a relaxed and casual feeling. So imagine if you are new to our community and you see that sometimes things don't start on time, or they start late when someone hasn't arrived. And you see that the new member ceremony didn't start right on time. And so you start to think that our start times at Chalice are mostly kind of soft start times. And then when you're the one running late to a meeting, you kind of expect that your group will wait for you before they start. And instead you show up 10 minutes late and realize that the meeting already started and that you've missed some of the information. So this can feel very unwelcoming to know that sometimes a committee waits for everyone to arrive before they start, depending on who you're waiting for, and sometimes they don't. And there's something invisible about who they will wait for and who they don't. Now, I'm not telling you this because I think we need to rigidly and uniformly follow a set of rules that are the same for everything we do. What I'm saying is that one of the steps toward building a diverse, multicultural community is to recognize that we have a culture and to start to become conscious of what some of the norms of our Chalice culture are, and then to be mindful and intentional about creating a community that can hold more than one culture, more than one way of doing things. So for example, another one of our unspoken norms, I think, is that we don't want the ideas we encounter at Chalice to be too uncomfortable. There's an acceptable range of discomfort that we expect here. And the main person you tolerate making you a little uncomfortable is me, the minister, because that's one of the roles I play in our community, one of the reasons you have me here. One of the reasons you've asked a minister to help guide the community. And we are a diverse community when it comes to sharing of ideas, and I know that on any given coffee hour, we can hear and exchange a wide variety of thoughts and ideas about lots of different issues. And those are mostly all still in the realm of things we feel comfortable discussing and debating. The area that I think has brought some significant discomfort over the past year has been our anti-racism work. Discussions about Black Lives Matter, about funding or defunding the police, and now discussion about the 8th principle, and ultimately whether or not we at Chalice will choose to adopt it. We will consider this question at our congregational meeting on June 12th. So this work has been and will continue to be challenging for our community because I would suggest we have an expectation that Chalice should be a place where we feel comfortable and should be a place where conflict does not happen. Or if it does, that it's handled quickly and quietly so we can get back to feeling comfortable and unchallenged about what we're doing. Sometimes just the fact that we might have some different ideas among us is uncomfortable because so many of us connected to Chalice from a sense of belonging, and feeling like we have different opinions and points of view can threaten that feeling of belonging, right? So let me say again, I think we have an expectation that Chalice should be a place where we feel comfortable, and that it should be a place where conflict does not happen, or if it does, that it's handled quickly and quietly, so we can get back to feeling comfortable and unchallenged about whatever we're doing. Really doing anti-racism work means that we have to let go of the expectation that we will always feel comfortable and unchallenged in our Chalice community. Because if we are truly making space that can hold multiple cultures, that can find validity in doing things in a variety of different ways, then we will surely hear ideas and information that we have not heard before. Ideas and information that may indeed feel uncomfortable. The idea that we have a right to feel comfortable is part of white supremacy culture. We can see this idea so clearly at work in, for example, my favorite example these days, Florida, where a law is soon to be passed with this wording: "It is a principle of individual freedom that an individual should not be made to feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race. A corollary to the idea that we have a right to be comfortable is the idea that conflict is bad and to be avoided. A different culture, a different set of norms might offer that healthy conflict is to be expected in a diverse multicultural community, and that healthy conflict is one catalyst for growth and learning. If you have been engaging with the work led by our transformation team here at Chalice, our group of people who are working to dismantle white supremacy, then surely you have experienced times of discomfort. And you have learned that your discomfort is not to be pushed aside, but is instead the gateway to deep personal growth. So I know that all of this must feel very vague. I wish I could tell you the perfect story about multiculturalism and personal growth that would illuminate everything. But this work isn't so tidy and it doesn't fit into neat and inspirational stories. What I can tell you is that in my own work, my own sense of doing this, that I've broadened not just my tolerance, but my embrace for doing things a different way, having different values, and my sense of the world that I'm living in has become messier, but also more loving. When I am struggling with a question, or when I am with you as you are struggling with a question, I am more likely to say now that there is no wrong answer, right? And what a relief. There is no wrong answer. There is no wrong choice, only learning. I used to think there were right and wrong ways of doing things, and now I mostly see that there's just choices to be made, not right or wrong. Everything is about learning. Now, for us to go deeper with this word multicultural, I want to share some information from a social psychologist, Andrew Luttrell. He is an assistant professor of psychological science at Ball State University in Indiana, and he has a podcast and YouTube channel for sharing information of interest to him and to us. So keep in mind as he's speaking that he's talking to us about research and published studies, not just ideas he has. So he has some words of caution for us about multiculturalism.
Hi again. I'm back to talk about multiculturalism versus colorblindness, and you can tell I'm recording this right after the other one because I'm wearing the same shirt. I strongly encourage you to watch last week's video before continuing on with this week's video. I'll make a link available very efficiently for you. I'll make it as easy as possible, but get the full rundown on what the difference between colorblindness and multiculturalism is, and we'll pick up from there. If you're ignoring me and you need a summary, basically colorblindness is a way of thinking about diversity that focuses on making sure everyone is treated exactly the same and ignoring group differences. Multiculturalism is another approach to diversity that says the best way to navigate a diverse society is to embrace the differences that people bring to the table. Most of the psychological research seems to hint at colorblindness being a less than optimal strategy, but multiculturalism seems to do some good things. But what we're going to talk about this week is that multiculturalism is not perfect either. The first thing to understand is that multiculturalism is not a perfect answer to all of the things that can be challenging about navigating a diverse society. So on the one hand, yes, it's true that multiculturalism is associated with less prejudice compared to colorblindness, but it's also associated with slightly more stereotyping. After all, if you're attending to and really making sure you acknowledge the groups that people come from and the qualities that might be associated with those groups, it can be somewhat easier to stereotype in ways that you may not intend. The other challenge related to multiculturalism runs a little deeper, and a lot of this draws from research from Victoria Plout and her colleagues. The gist is that multiculturalism can seem to exclude people in a majority group In other words, when multiculturalism and diversity initiatives are so focused on acknowledging and embracing group differences, celebrating minority experience, it can seem to alienate majority group members. Now, you might think, well, tough, deal with it. But the problem is that in order for these kinds of initiatives to make change, everybody's got to be on board with them. So how can we know that this is a challenge, and what might we do about it? So a bunch of good research seems to show that white participants view multiculturalism as exclusionary. Some tasks have white participants pairing multiculturalism ideas with a sense of exclusion, and they find that whites pair those two concepts together more closely than non-white participants do. The other thing we know about this issue is that when white participants are faced with multiculturalism, they connect that idea less to a sense of themselves than do racial minority groups. And the issue there is also that when white participants distance themselves from multiculturalism, they're also tending to be less supportive of general diversity initiatives. So what do we do about this? How can we maximize the usefulness of a multicultural approach to diversity? Well, the answer seems to be in what Plout and colleagues are calling all-inclusive multiculturalism as sort of a next step in the phase of diversity ideology. The idea here is to be very clear that when we talk about diversity and multiculturalism, we are talking about everybody, that all groups bring something to the table. It's not just that minority groups bring something to the table in diversity contexts, it's that every group brings something unique to the table, and that includes European American backgrounds. So what they've done is they've had white participants either read about multiculturalism through the default narrative that's often used to describe diversity in ways that we've seen can seem to exclude whites from the dialogue, but they also created a version of that description that was very clear about the fact that all-inclusive multiculturalism means that even European American backgrounds bring something unique to a table. In those cases, they find that white participants are less threatened and show less of this negative reaction to multiculturalism as an initiative. So bringing all of this together, it seems that even though multiculturalism tends to be slightly better than colorblindness as a worldview that promotes real, genuine diversity and positive outcomes of it, it still isn't perfect under its sort of broad definition. We saw that in some cases multiculturalism could provoke more stereotyping, so it's not a perfect solution, but we also saw that it can imply exclusion of majority group members who may feel like, although they embrace diversity, that their group is now being left out of the conversation. So rather than move along and say, well, there's no such thing as finding a solution to this question, researchers say, well, let's tackle the problem. Let's find the root cause of what's going on between not accepting a multicultural diversity perspective and address it. And when we do, we find more positive outcomes. So a hopeful message after all. That does it for this week. Next week I'll be back with something else, and I promise I'll be wearing a different shirt.
So I wanted to share that message because I think many of us, I include myself, would have no idea that some people hear about multiculturalism and feel that the majority group is being excluded. So that's good for us to know. But it's kind of like in a world of white supremacy, white people have all the power. So when we talk about dismantling white supremacy, you could imagine that that means giving Black, Indigenous, and people of color all the power instead. When really the hope of dismantling white supremacy is to find a new way of being together, where no one group holds all the power because of skin color or ethnic identity. You've maybe heard the saying, we don't want a bigger slice of pie, we want a new pie or a cake. We don't want to privilege a different set of cultures, we want a new way of doing things so that many cultures are freely expressed and valued. In your small groups, your teams and committees, I encourage you to take some time to talk about the unwritten rules of your group. And consider writing them down, consider articulating them. They aren't unwritten secrets if you put them in writing and share them from time to time. I know from experience that talking with you about all this sounds good in theory. It's easy to sit and listen to what I'm saying and feel like, that sounds good, I get it. What I want you to do is to pay attention when the time comes that you feel uncomfortable about what's happening. Maybe it's something that's already happened. Maybe it's something that's still ahead. But when that time comes, I hope you will try to remember that your discomfort may be a gateway to new learning. Don't push your discomfort away. And don't blame the person or the situation that's creating the discomfort. Just welcome your discomfort as a spiritual practice. Sit with it, take it in, accept it as a gift. Growth and learning are part of why we come together here at Chalice. May we have the courage to continue to learn and grow together. May it be so. You're invited to rise in body or spirit to join in singing.
Bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. One last time. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
The Sunday offering is an expression of the generosity that makes our congregational life possible. As Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg writes, generosity is characterized by the inner quality of letting go or relinquishing. Being able to let go, to give up, to renounce, to give generously. These capacities spring from the same source within us. When we practice generosity, we open to all of these liberating qualities simultaneously. Please text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the numbers, the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. And if you've already entered that information previously when you've donated, you won't need to enter it again. If your Sunday donation is part of your pledge payment, please be sure to indicate the word pledge after the dollar amount. And also know that you can make a text donation anytime. The phone number will be on screen in just a moment. Please give generously. Please join me in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. As Unitarian Universalists, we aspire to teach the fragile art of hospitality. Whoop.
Everything is possible, this I know, this I know, this I know.
It's so good what's coming next. Please join me in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. We aspire to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart. There's a second slide. To prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
Everything is possible, this I know, this I know, this I know. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free, bountiful and free, where I'm supposed to be. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible, this I know, this I know, this I know. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free, bountiful and free, where I'm supposed to be. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible, this I know. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free, bountiful and free, where I'm supposed to be. Everything is possible, this I know. I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible. Everything is bountiful and free. Bountiful. Everything is I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible. Everything is bountiful and free. Bountiful. Everything is I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible. Everything is possible. I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible. I'm bountiful and free. Everything is possible.
I just want you to join me in expressing our gratitude to Tech Team, who are trying to figure out how to do the sound in this room and the sound on Zoom and be in control of both of those things. So I know that that's part of what's going on. So thank you. I want to invite you to join me in prayer. One prayer posture I often use and would invite you to consider is to place a left hand over the heart and acknowledging our individual inherent worth and dignity. And you can put your right hand on the shoulder of the person next to you if that's okay, or raised up to the sky, acknowledging our interdependence. Our prayer is adapted from one by Reverend Elizabeth Nguyen. Spirit of life, forgive us for the things we would really rather not learn. Didn't think we needed to. We thought someone else could do it. Thought a leader was coming to do it. Thought the young people could do it, or the elders could do it, or the professionals. Or we don't want to learn because it means letting go of something we hold dear, letting go of being people who know the answers, letting go of being people who don't know, letting go of the way we see the world, letting go of how we might have to change, letting go of certainty, of logic, of facts, of control, of the myth that we can live on this earth and not harm, or the myth that we can't learn anything new. Spirit of life, help us to learn, please. And then help us to live what we have learned and do right by the gift of having been taught. Amen. You're invited again to rise in body or spirit to join in singing.
All the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all of its flowers. All the colors, when the sunlight shines out through a rift in the cloud and it showers. All the colors, as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por esos los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. All the colors, yes, the colors of people parading on by with their banners. All the colors, yes, the colors of pennants and streamers and plumes and bandanas. All the colors, yes, the colors of people now taking their place in the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that their freedom is won. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun.
Before we close the service, I'd like to remind newcomers online to please use the link in the chat box to add your name to our email list, and here in person just to touch base with me after the service. Our closing words come from Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. In every person we meet, especially those who cause us discomfort. We find an opportunity for us to grow, to learn, to go further along the path of transformation that is our purpose in life. Every single one is our teacher. May the next week bring you many such moments of meeting that help you become the person you want to be, and may you welcome them with joy. Love and blessings to each of you. Blessed be. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well, and after our closing hymn, please return to your seats for a few announcements.
Drink from the well together, heart to heart we are dancing as one, dancing for justice, dancing for joy, dance for a love that we're all a part of. We drink from the well, spirits renewed, we drink from the well, stand hand in hand, we drink from the well, dancing for joy.
All right. So these announcements are for all of us, online and in person. So the next 3 Sundays, so starting next week, we're going to have special deluxe coffee hours, coffee more than an hour after the service. So going to 12:30, we're calling these Return to Center Sundays. They're part of our pledge drive. Whether or not you attended worship in person, we want to encourage you to come to campus for coffee hour afterward. It's been quite a while since some of us have been to campus. We're all learning. It's kind of hard to get here. So we want to help build that muscle, strengthen those muscles with each other. So we also want to encourage you to reach out to someone else at Chalice that you haven't seen in a while and invite them to come with you so you can be together in person. There will be special refreshments and other special things happening each Sunday, so you'll get email with more information about this as we have them. Our online coffee hour is also available, and we will have special things for that group as well. So next Sunday, April 10th, as our first Sunday of these special Sundays, we're going to have a presentation from our Mission Statement Task Force. Many of you have been taking those polls in the e-news all year, so they have some news for us. So those of you attending online will go to the online coffee hour as usual, and then you will attend the presentation through that Zoom gathering. So again, keep an eye on your emails and the monthly newsletter for more details and information. Is there anything I want to tell you about next Sunday? No. But every Sunday has some different things. So, if you have space on your social calendar, consider coming for all of them. Also, just a reminder, you got an email this week. There is a vigil this afternoon for you, a peace vigil for Ukraine at 4 o'clock here in Escondido at Maple Street Plaza. And then for our in-person congregants, you're invited to enjoy social time on the courtyard Remember, there's signs out, I think, but the tented area is a place to leave your masks on here outside the chapel doors. Refreshments are next to the hub, and you can take your masks off there to enjoy coffee. And please remember always, wherever you are, that children younger than 5 years old are not vaccinated, so please take care around them. Good to be with you. Enjoy.